So there's one ingredient that consistently shows up in every population that lives the longest. And it's not what most people think. It's not some exotic superfood or an expensive supplement. It's this extra virgin olive oil with a really golden, deep green colour, a really peppery smell, and to be honest, completely different to the usual ultra processed vegetable oil that we're all used to. And I eat this every single day. Now, in the last 48 hours alone, I've had this on toast, in scrambled eggs, I've had this on some big sliced beef tomato with some mozzarella, and this right here will actually be used in some hummus that I'm making later. Now, the people in the Mediterranean, particularly in places like Crete and parts of Italy, consume massive amounts of it, sometimes 4 to 5 tablespoons a day, and they have some of the lowest rates of heart disease and dementia anywhere in the world. And here's what's fascinating. For decades, we were told that fat was bad for us, that it would clog our arteries and make us gain weight. We swapped butter for margarine, we bought low-fat everything, and guess what happened? We got sicker. Heart disease rates didn't fall, they rose. Obesity exploded. Type 2 diabetes became an epidemic. We got it completely wrong. And understanding why extra virgin olive oil is so protective reveals just how misguided our approach to nutrition has been over the years. Some people say, oh, well, it's just correlation, but that's not true. We have randomised controlled trials, the gold standards of medical research, showing that people who consume extra virgin olive oil as their primary fat source have significantly lower rates of cardiovascular events, of strokes, and cognitive decline. One of the most famous studies, called the PREDIMED trial, followed over 7,000 people at high risk of heart disease and found that those who ate a Mediterranean diet rich in extra virgin olive oil had a 30% reduction in major cardiovascular events compared to those on a low-fat diet. Now that's enormous. Most medications that we prescribe don't come close to that level of benefit. Yet somehow, olive oil still gets lumped in with the fats that you should limit in generic dietary advice. And people are scared to use it because they think it will make them fat or unhealthy. Well, that's so far from the truth. So what makes extra virgin olive oil different? So not all olive oils are created equally. And this is really crucial to this whole debate here. When we talk about the health benefits of olive oil, we're specifically talking about extra virgin olive oil, which is cold pressed and unrefined. And this is what the labels of all of these olive oils say. This means that the oil is extracted mechanically without heat or without chemical solvents, preserving all of the beneficial compounds that make it so powerful. Regular olive oil or refined olive oil or even vegetable oils have been processed with heat and chemicals to remove impurities, and in doing so, it loses most of its health-promoting properties. What you're left with is fat and not much else. Extra virgin olive oil, on the other hand, is packed with polyphenols, compounds that have profound anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects throughout your body. The main fat in olive oil is called oleic acid, a monounsaturated fat that makes up about 73% of its content. Your body uses oleic acid to build cell membranes, the protective barrier around every single cell in your body. When your cell membranes are made from healthy fats like oleic acid, they're more fluid and flexible, which means that cells can communicate better, nutrients can get in more easily, and waste products can get out efficiently. Now, if you compare that to the cell membranes built from damaged fats, the kind that you get from ultra-processed seed oils that have been treated and refined, then you end up with rigid, dysfunctional membranes that don't work properly. And this affects everything, from how your cells respond to insulin, how your immune system functions, how your brain cells transmit signals. But it's the polyphenols in extra virgin olive oil that really set it apart. These are plant compounds that act as powerful antioxidants, protecting your cells from oxidative damage. Now, oxidative damage happens when unstable molecules called free radicals attack your cells. They damage DNA, they damage proteins, and also fats. This process is at the heart of aging and most chronic diseases like heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, and even things like arthritis. Now, your body does have its own defense systems, but they can be overwhelmed, especially when you're exposed to things like air pollution or cigarette smoke or ultra-processed foods, even chronic stress, or even just the normal metabolic processes of being alive. The polyphenols in olive oil are really, really powerful. They bolster your defense systems. They neutralize free radicals before they can cause any damage, and this makes them so important for longevity. Let's move on to how olive oil protects your heart. So heart disease is the leading cause of deaths globally, and one of the main drivers is inflammation in your arteries. When the lining of your arteries becomes inflamed, it triggers a cascade of events that leads to atherosclerosis, which is the buildup of plaques that narrow your arteries and restrict the blood flow. Fairly simple-ish. Now, the plaques can rupture, causing blood clots that lead to heart attacks and strokes. For years, we blamed dietary cholesterol and saturated fat for this process. But the picture is far more complicated than that. What actually matters is oxidative damage to LDL cholesterol, which is the so-called bad cholesterol. When LDL particles get oxidized, they become dangerous. They embed themselves in the artery walls and they trigger inflammation. Unoxidized LDL is far less problematic. Extra virgin olive oil protects against this in multiple ways. The polyphenols directly reduce oxidation of LDL cholesterol, making it less likely to damage your arteries. They also reduce inflammation throughout your body by inhibiting inflammatory pathways at a cellular level. Studies show that people who consume extra virgin olive oil regularly, like every day, have lower levels of something called C-reactive protein, which is a marker of systemic inflammation, and lower levels of inflammatory molecules called cytokines. Now, this isn't just theoretical. When researchers look at the actual cardiovascular outcomes, not just biomarkers, the benefits are really clear. In the PREDIMED trial that I mentioned earlier, the people consuming extra virgin olive oil didn't just have better blood markers, they actually had fewer heart attacks and fewer strokes. There's also an effect on blood pressure here. High blood pressure damages your arteries over time, increasing the risk of heart attacks and strokes and kidney disease. Extra virgin olive oil has been shown to lower both systolic and diastolic blood pressure, particularly in people with hypertension already. Now, the exact mechanisms aren't yet fully understood, but it's thought to involve improved endothelial function, which is how well the lining of your blood vessels can relax and dilate. When your endothelium works properly, blood flows more easily and your heart doesn't have to work as hard. Polyphenols in olive oil improve endothelial function. They help your blood vessels stay flexible and responsive. Now, let's talk about the brain for a minute. So your brain is about 60% fat, and the types of fats that you consume directly affect how it functions. The monounsaturated fats in olive oil are incorporated into brain cell membranes, improving their fluidity and their function. But beyond that, there's growing evidence that extra virgin olive oil protects against cognitive decline and dementia. Alzheimer's disease, which is the most common form of dementia, is characterized by the accumulation of abnormal proteins in the brain, inflammation, and oxidative damage. These processes kill brain cells over time, leading to memory loss and cognitive decline. Now, studies suggest that the polyphenols in extra virgin olive oil may reduce the buildup of these abnormal proteins, particularly ones called beta amyloid plaques and tau tangles, which are the hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. They also reduce neuroinflammation, the chronic low-grade inflammation in the brain that accelerates cognitive decline. In population studies, people who consume Mediterranean diets rich in olive oil have significantly lower rates of Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. Even in people who already have mild cognitive impairment, increasing olive oil consumption has been associated with slower rates of decline. There's also evidence that olive oil supports the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, which is a protein that promotes the growth and survival of neurons. Now, BDNF is crucial for learning, for memory, and overall brain health. Low levels of BDNF are linked to depression, anxiety, and neurodegenerative diseases. The polyphenols in olive oil appear to boost BDNF production, which may explain some of the cognitive benefits seen in people who consume it regularly. One of the biggest misconceptions about olive oil is that it will make you gain weight because it's calorie dense. Now, yes, olive oil is really high in calories. It's about 120 calories per tablespoon, but calories from different sources don't affect your body the same way. The monounsaturated fats in olive oil are highly satisfying, meaning that they keep you full for longer. When you eat a meal cooked with extra virgin olive oil, you're less likely to snack afterwards or overeat at your next meal. This is partly because fat slows gastric emptying, which is the rate at which food leaves your stomach, keeping you satisfied for hours. There's also evidence that olive oil affects hormones that regulate hunger and satiety. It increases the production of hormones like GLP-1, which signal to your brain that you're full, and it reduces ghrelin, which is the hormone that makes you feel hungry. Now, these aren't just minor effects. They translate into real differences in food intake and body weight over time. Multiple studies have shown that people following Mediterranean diets rich in olive oil, and therefore calories, don't gain weight, and in some cases, they lose weight more effectively than people on low-fat diets, despite consuming more total fat. The anti-inflammatory effects of olive oil also play a role here. So chronic low-grade inflammation interferes with insulin signaling and promotes fat storage, particularly around your abdomen. Visceral fat, which is the fat that surrounds your organs, is metabolically active and releases inflammatory molecules that worsen insulin resistance and increase disease risk. By reducing systemic inflammation, olive oil helps to improve insulin sensitivity, making it easier for your body to regulate blood sugar and less likely to store excess energy as fat. Now, this brings me on to something quite important on this topic. Not all extra virgin olive oils have the same polyphenol content, and this matters massively for the health benefits. The amount of polyphenols in olive oil depends on several different factors. The variety of olives used, how ripe they were when they were harvested, how quickly they were pressed after picking, and how the oil is stored. Now, olive oil made from early harvest olives, picked when they're still slightly green, tend to have higher polyphenol levels. You can often taste this. High polyphenol olive oil has a peppery, slightly bitter taste that catches the back of your throat. It's really, really quite strong. Now, that peppery sensation is actually the polyphenols irritating your throat in a good way. It's a sign of quality. One of the most studied polyphenols in olive oil is actually one called oleocanthal, which has powerful anti-inflammatory properties. Researchers discovered that oleocanthal works similarly to ibuprofen, inhibiting the same enzymes that cause inflammation and pain, but without the side effects of long-term NSAID use. The amount of oleocanthal that you can get from a couple of tablespoons of high-quality extra virgin olive oil is roughly equivalent to a low dose of ibuprofen, which is crazy to think about. Now, over time, this daily anti-inflammatory effect adds up. It reduces chronic inflammation throughout your body. Another important polyphenol is one called hydroxytyrosol, which has potent anti-inflammatory effects and may even protect against cancer. There are some lab studies that show how hydroxytyrosol can inhibit the growth of cancer cells and induce something called apoptosis, which is the process by which damaged cells self-destruct. Now, while we can't directly extrapolate these findings to humans, population studies do show that people who consume more olive oil have lower rates of certain cancers, particularly breast and colorectal cancer. The mechanisms likely involve reducing oxidative DNA damage, decreasing inflammation, and modulating hormones that can promote cancer growth. So this is a really interesting space to keep an eye on. So how do you actually choose and use olive oil properly? Now, the health benefits that we're talking about in this video only apply to genuine, high-quality extra virgin olive oil. And unfortunately, the market is rife with fraud. Some bottles labelled as extra virgin have been cut with cheaper refined oils or haven't been processed properly. To get the really good stuff, then you need to check for a few key things on the label. The first one is check for a harvest date on the bottle, not just a best by or use by date. Olive oil degrades over time and polyphenols break down, so you want oil that's been harvested within the last year. The second thing to look for is oil in dark glass bottles or tins, or clay or pottery, which protect it from light damage. The third one is try to find oils with some indication of polyphenol content, or those that are labelled as early harvest or single estate. When you taste good extra virgin olive oil, it should be vibrant with fruity, grassy, or herbal notes, and that characteristic peppery taste. If it tastes flat or greasy or rancid or no taste at all, then it's either low quality or it's gone off. Store your olive oil in a cool, dark place in a cupboard away from heat and light, and use it within a few months of opening. Don't buy massive bottles or massive tins that will sit in your cupboard for half a year, because the polyphenols will degrade. Now, there's a really interesting myth here that probably a lot of you are thinking about, that you shouldn't cook with extra virgin olive oil because it has a low smoke point and it will become toxic when heated. But this is largely untrue. While extra virgin olive oil has a lower smoke point than refined oils, around 190 to 200 Celsius, it's still stable for most cooking methods. The polyphenols and the antioxidants in the oil actually protect it from breaking down during heating. Studies have shown that extra virgin olive oil remains stable even when used for frying, and it produces fewer harmful compounds than most seed oils like sunflower or canola or rapeseed oil. For extremely high heat cooking like deep frying at high temperatures, then yes, you might choose a more refined oil, but for roasting or sautéing or even shallow frying, then this stuff is perfectly fine and far healthier than the alternatives. The populations that live the longest don't use olive oil sparingly. They drizzle it liberally on salads, they use it for cooking all the time, they dip bread in it, and they consume several tablespoons every single day. For me, a bottle like this will probably last 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a bit less. That's not occasional use, it's a dietary staple. If you want the health benefits seen in Mediterranean populations and in clinical trials, then you need to make olive oil your primary source of fat. It means replacing butter with olive oil where possible, avoiding seed oils and margarine, and being generous with how much you use. Just because it's fat, you shouldn't be scared of it. It's good for you. Start your day by adding a tablespoon to your breakfast, whether that's drizzled over scrambled eggs, mixed into Greek yogurt, or even on sourdough toast instead of butter. Use it as the base for salad dressings instead of bottled dressings which are full of sugar and refined oils. Cook your veg in it, roast your proteins with it, finish dishes with a drizzle of high quality oil for extra flavour and extra polyphenols. For most people, it's quite counterintuitive. What's the point in drizzling extra fat on my food? But remember, forget the calories. This is good for you. If you're having 3 meals a day and you're using olive oil in each one, then you'll easily hit 3 to 4 tablespoons a day, which is the amount associated with significant health benefits. The beauty of olive oil is that it makes healthy food taste better. Vegetables roasted in olive oil with some sea salt are genuinely delicious. Salad dressings with olive oil and lemon juice and some herbs or maybe some garlic are satisfying and flavourful. You're not suffering through bland, tasteless health food. You're eating in a way that's both pleasurable and profoundly good for you, which is exactly how eating should be. What extra virgin olive oil represents is a fundamental shift in how we think about food and nutrition. For decades, we were told that fat was the enemy, that we should eat low-fat diets and fill up on carbohydrates instead. That advice was based on flawed science and cherry-picked data, and it's contributed to the chronic disease epidemic that we're living through now. The truth is that the type of fat matters far more than the total amount. Healthy fats, like the kind you get from extra virgin olive oil and nuts and avocados and oily fish, these are essential for your body to function properly. They reduce inflammation, they protect your cells, they support your brain, and they help regulate your appetite and your metabolism. Ultra-processed seed oils, on the other hand, the kind found in the vast majority of ultra-processed foods, aren't anywhere near as good for you as these are. They're extracted using heat and chemical solvents, which sounds disgusting. Swapping those oils for these oils, extra virgin olive oil, is one of the most impactful dietary changes that you can make, with benefits that extend to nearly every system in your body. The research is overwhelming here. The populations that consume the most extra virgin olive oil live longer. They have lower rates of chronic disease, and they maintain better cognitive function into old age. Clinical trials confirm that adding olive oil to your diet, forgetting about the calories, reduces your risk of heart attacks, strokes, and dementia, and it helps you live longer. It's one of the most well-supported dietary interventions that we have, backed by decades of research and centuries of traditional use. If you want to live longer and stay healthier, then making extra virgin olive oil a daily part of your diet is one of the simplest and most effective things that you can do.